How to start world building for D&D. What is world building? World building is the creation of a certain aspect for a fictional world. For example, in The Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien had to world build the hobbits. World build what, you may ask? Anything that's part of the hobbit culture, such as food or the Shire where the hobbits are from. World building is really creating anything about anything in a fictional world, most likely one you made. World building can seem incredibly daunting because you have so much to create and flesh out about your world. But once you break it down into smaller pieces, it becomes a lot more manageable. Races. The races of your fantasy world are the beings that inhabit your world, such as dwarves, humans, or elves. You can create any race and world build existing races any way that you want. In the current setting I'm world building, the kingdom of Helfingar, dwarves are called Dwarkar, and they are masters of runesmithing, an incredibly difficult ancient magic. They are reclusive and live in 5 delvings called the Grey Holds, and are ruled by the Grey Council, then the king of Helfingar over them. The Dwarkar are very different than an average dwarf you might think of from Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings, which are such incredible books and have magnificent world building, are so popular that they became the universal standard for people when they picture a dwarf. And while they are great dwarves, you don't need to match them perfectly. Make your own dwarves with your own spin. And like I said earlier, you can create any race. A lot of people stick to the races found in Dungeons & Dragons or Lord of the Rings. Give your world special races because your world needs something that makes it special and differentiates it from other fantasy worlds. Languages. Fantasy languages are the thing that world builders wish they could make. I'll say this bluntly, your fantasy race does not need its own language. It is extremely cool and is an incredibly cool part of world building, but I would bet my fantasy world that you don't have the skills to make your own language. The most famous world builder to do this, of course, is J.R.R. Tolkien, with Quenya, one of the Elvish languages, Kulzdul for the dwarves, and Black Speech for the orcs and goblins, just to name a few. Basically, nobody has the skills to make their own fantasy language, so the thing I would recommend for this is world building certain words or phrases that your race uses that is specific to them and their language habits. A dwarf is probably more blunt and down to earth, while an elf is going to use more fancy language and words. Festivals or holidays. Festivals and holidays are, or any event, really, are a wonderful thing to include in your world building. Such as we humans might celebrate Halloween or Christmas, the people in your fantasy world will have their own holidays and events, so remember to include them in your fantasy world or explain their absence, which is great world building as well. Food. In our world, different cultures have different foods. In your fantasy world, it's no different. Adding different fantasy foods into your world and extra types of food, maybe different meat, fruit, or vegetables, can be a very useful tool in this. Now, it's no problem to include real-life crops, such as potatoes or tomatoes, and I highly recommend that you do include them, but adding crops of your own creation into your fantasy world really helps your world build and develop that certain race's culture. Dwarves might love eating mushrooms, or humans might love and see potatoes as a delicacy. Religions. In my fantasy world, there are 3 orders of gods: the One, the Seven, and the Nocturnus gods. They are each known differently throughout my world and are all worshipped differently. However your fantasy world got created, your world likely has gods. You might have a god of magic, where magic comes from, or a god of smithing, which dwarves worship. While your world does not need to have gods, I would highly suggest it because it's a great thing to include in your world and to world build about. I can't really suggest too much more because your world's religions are highly specific, but I hope this is helpful. Towns and cities. When I say towns and cities, I really mean where your towns and cities are. The location of your towns and cities is very important. Do not place your cities in locations they would never form. For example, a settlement in a desert is incredibly rare because of lack of water and inability to grow crops. Towns are likely to be formed near rivers because they provide a reliable source of water to grow crops. Placing towns and cities in good places can be difficult, but it is a great thing to keep in mind while world building. Animals. The animals of your world: bears, dragons, trolls. What can I say other than World build. Make your own monsters. Make folktales. Just write stories. Make your own monsters by having a good idea or combining monsters. I extremely recommend it as it's really fun and you can write excellent stories about it. Use animals from our world in interesting ways or give them your own twist. Everything in world building you choose, but what can I other say about your fancy animals than let the inspiration and ideas flow? Magic. Magic is a very complex thing in world building, so I won't go into a high amount of depth here, but I will cover one of the most important things about magic systems: soft versus hard magic. If you don't watch many videos about magic systems in fantasy worlds, you probably don't know what a hard or soft magic system are. In the simplest term, soft magic is a magic system where magic can be cast without a lot of hard defined rules, and hard magic systems are where everything you can cast have hard and clearly set rules. An example magic system that is soft is Harry Potter, where they say a word such as Lumos and it just happens. There's no real explanation for how Lumos makes a light appear at the tip of your wand. The official D&D setting of Faerun is an example of a hard magic system. Mishra, the god of magic, created the Weave, a kind of field encapsulates the world that Faerun is in, and wizards can access the Weave and use it to cast spells. Both sides of magic systems can be good and written well and have different advantages. Soft magic can be useful for mysteries, while hard magic can be really useful for building up a payoff. Map making. Map making isn't a needed part of world building, but one of my favorites. And as a person who's been drawing maps since I started playing D&D, I can easily say my early maps were not so great looking back. But that's completely fine. Your maps can be a masterpiece or kindergarten artwork. It doesn't matter because you tried. And the more that you practice, the better you'll get. The biggest reasons I recommend to make a map for your fantasy world are because it helps organize locations, gives you inspiration to world build that you might not have thought of, and most of all, it helps you visualize your world. That's the end of the video. I do have some more info on world building, but for the sake of keeping this video concise, I didn't include some of the more complex topics like real estate, rivers, and mountains. If you want to learn more about that, check out my Discord server in the main archives channel. You can check out my Dungeon Master's Guide, which goes into more depth and a bunch of other parts about being a Dungeon Master. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and have a good one.